psychyogi.org. Sutherland, 1947. The Theory of Differential Association. Background. The background to this study is Bandura and his social learning theory. A quick recap of social learning theory if you haven't heard of it before, or if you have. It says that vicarious learning can occur, so learning from others being rewarded and punished. So you don't have to be rewarded and punished yourself to learn that certain behaviours can get you rewarded and punished. Most people probably don't murder people or steal from shops because they've seen other people punished for those actions. Whereas other people may try to perform better in school or at work because they've seen other people rewarded better. If you see someone get a pay rise because they've worked slightly harder than you did, then the chances are that you would try to work harder as well. And that's called vicarious learning. The people we learn from are called models, and learning does not always result from direct actions. Again, we don't have to actually do anything ourselves to learn things, according to social learning theory. Sutherland assumes that criminal behaviour is learned. Secondly, the social learning theory explains deviant behaviour through individual social interactions and relationships. According to this theory, the people who become criminals do so because they associate with other criminals. This study is from Turning to Crime, Upbringing, and then further categorised into learning from others. Now on to the actual theory. There are 9 postulates of the theory, which we'll go through now, some of which won't need explaining because they're obvious. Number 1, criminal behaviour is learned. Number 2, criminal behaviour is learned in interacting and communicating with other people. Number 3, the most important part of criminal behaviour is learnt through a person's close circle of friends. This means that the media and other influencers are secondary. So you're more likely to learn how to become a criminal if your friends themselves are criminals. Number 4, such learning involves the development of both the techniques required to commit the crime, so for example, the delicate touch of a pickpocket, and it also involves the social transmission of values, attitudes, drives, motivations, and rationalizations for committing the crime. For example, fraudsters may rationalize their criminality because it's a victimless crime. They may feel a resentment of capitalism and thus want to damage it because that's what their friends think. Number 5. The specific direction of the motives and drives is learnt from the definition of legal codes as favourable or unfavourable. For example, a person may think that planning and building regulations are unfavourable and stifle the freedom of their individual and thus decides to flout them. So let's say you've bought a house and you want to have an extension but you live in a protected area and you can't build the extension you want. You can build an extension, but it's limited in terms of height or design and materials you have to use. So you decide, no, I don't like the idea of this. This is an unfavourable law to me. I'm going to build whatever I like. And if you've done that, you may have learnt that from someone you know. Nothing happened to them. Well, I'll do it then. That's part of the social learning theory again. 6. A person becomes a criminal when the number of unfavourable laws becomes excessive. If a person is around their friends and they all say, well, stealing is a daft law, that not stealing, we don't really care for this. We like stealing. So not stealing is an unfavourable law. Not speeding in a car is an unfavourable law because we get places slowly. So then they start having all these, and then they start developing more criminal behaviours. Number 7, these associations may vary in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. So Suppose our lawbreaker who decided to flout the planning and building regulations because they believed it stifled the individual's freedom finds out that after building his nice new house, another person has decided to do the same thing. But this person has built in front of his house, blocking the view. Our lawbreaker might now decide that planning and building regulations are favourable, so does not flout them again. Number 8. This process of learning the behaviours of criminals by associations is not limited to association, but instead can be learnt through every other mechanism of learning. For example, this may be learnt through operant conditioning. A child may not understand law, so decides to take sweets from a shop. The child gets away with the crime and thus is rewarded with free sweets. From then on, the child maintains a criminal behaviour as it has been previously rewarded for it. This is a bit of a strange statement for the theory to make, because it's essentially saying, well, criminal behaviour is learnt, but it's learnt in association, but it's also learnt in every other way. So it sort of makes every other point redundant if they're saying that, well, it's still learnt. It doesn't make it redundant, but it's close to doing so. Number 9. While criminal behaviour is an expression of general needs and values, it is not explained by those general needs and values, since non-criminal behaviour is an expression of the same needs and values. So Sutherland is saying that criminality is not just dependent on the associations, but also through the wider context of the individual's lives. For instance, a poor man may steal because he is poor and he has made criminal associations that suggest to him that stealing is fine. While a rich man may not steal because even though he has made associations that stealing is fine, he has no need to steal. But then it could also mean that people who don't steal not because they have generally different needs and values. Everyone needs food, but some people choose to steal it and some people choose not to steal it. And it may be that the person who's chosen to steal it has chosen to steal it because they've got a number of unfavourable laws in their mind that suggest to them that stealing is a good idea. Okay, evaluation. Now, evaluation for Sutherland is quite difficult because it is just a theory. So really we need studies in order to back up this theory. Some would argue that the theory is outdated, as the influence of the media is secondary to personal influences. Because nowadays the media is everywhere. The internet is everywhere we go. Most people will have a smartphone and thus can stay connected to the media all the time. So it's argued that it's not quite as up to date as it should be. And it could also be argued that this theory is reductionist. There have been several studies recently, for example Rain et al. 2002, that suggest that brain dysfunction may be the root of criminality. Or Brunner et al. 1993 suggests that genes and serotonin may have an impact on behaviour that could result in criminality. If you've enjoyed this Psych Yogi video, why not subscribe to keep up with all the latest videos.